you remember when Thanos outed himself to be a dirty Storm player?
I am inevitable.
Or what about Ultron found out to be a Ragavan sympathizer?
The beauty of it. The inevitability.
All of this can be true and more with the Marvel x Magic the Gathering collaboration coming in 2025 that I think presents a massive collectability versus playability issue that is becoming a rising problem for the game and needs to be addressed ASAP. There's a lot of rumors around what could be happening, and I think we can use some of the templates for what we've seen so far in Universes Beyond and kind of extrapolate outward. And that's the discussion I want to have today, how the Marvel collaboration could ultimately lead to a big decline in what we could see in the game, and it may not be for the reason that you think. I'll provide a perspective and maybe a thought process to kind of work through what we can expect from the biggest collaboration and probably what's going to be the biggest set of eyes ever put on the game that we love. Now, let's take this back from a collectability perspective and talk about the change that we had recently, the shift in what it means to be a rare card in Magic the Gathering. And I'm talking about, of course, the one of one ring. Found in the booster packs of Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, this card ultimately just became the face of Magic. For the boomers of Magic the Gathering, we have cards like Black Lotus that have seen constant price increases, changes, and availability spikes and unspikes, whatever it might be. We've seen the classic videos of folks pulling it up from a random booster pack and just shaking in their boots because it's worth so much money. This is the game with Black Lotus in it. But of course, this has changed over time. Now with Post Malone buying the One Ring for approximately $2 million to $2.6 million, whatever you want to do in terms of your currency exchange rates, the card is the most expensive card to be ever sold in Magic the Gathering's history. Now, arguably, there could be more expensive cards out there in terms of the exclusivity and their playability in the game, but for a game piece, the one of one ring stands out. And this model really changed the success of Universes Beyond. We see it being claimed as the most or the second most successful Magic the Gathering set of all time. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings, of course, and that is across multiple different product lines, whether that be the exclusive kind of full art framing of things, the commander sets, the holiday sets, and just the baseline set, especially just because those sets came directly into Magic's most popular constructed format, being modern. Let's be honest, it's not standard. Let's just take that under the ring right then. With it coming direct to modern, we're going to see this model then be further developed in Assassin's Creed later this year, and likely following suit with the Final Fantasy collaboration. And these collaborations aren't ending anytime soon, but they present themselves as a problem because we don't have a long-term template for them. So far, we've kind of stumbled and bumbled our way through them, especially with the release of Secret Layers being kind of the first direct-to-consumer singles that are being printed by Wizards of the Coast. The acquisition model for them being the whole print demand controversy going on right now, or the lack thereof, it presents itself with a larger issue when it comes to Universes Beyond, because we already have accessibility issues when it comes to singles, right? With these singles being printed direct to user, what about full sets? And that's where a conversation around licensing really comes in, where we recently I did a video about this, actually talking about how a recent job posting did go up at Hasbro with a digital kind of licensing role, where it feels like they didn't have someone in this role kind of cementing out the licenses that we have for the Universes Beyond set, which is why we had issues where full sets, full commander sets with really powerful cards in them from sets like the Doctor Who collaboration are not available on Magic Online. And this has led to various changes from different creators like Saffron Olive and the MTG Goldfish Collective not doing their commander work anymore on Magic Online. And of course, with the recent announcements of CEDH coming to Magic Online, this is kind of in contention with each other, where we have large swaths of the community now flocking online, but now finding that their paper experience to their digital experience is not one for one. And again, that's because of lack of accessibility of these cards. Recently, we had the whole Fallout set come out, and then also the Warhammer 40k set come out. Very popular science fiction IPs. The Fallout set being very popular amongst our age of gamers here, but notably the Warhammer 40k set just being very much steeped in the nerddom that is Magic the Gathering. A lot of big creators such as Pleasant Kenobi being very big in the space. It's crazy to think that the Warhammer set was very limited in its availability. The commander sets were sold for a limited amount of time, so they were accessible at a point, but over time, over the years, these are mechanically unique cards that we may not see reprints of ever again. Remember what happened with the whole fiasco of the Walking Dead cards, which were eventually reprinted later down the line, but we legitimately had whole legacy leagues and tournaments where Rig Steadfast Leader was a actual legitimately viable card that could win games and like humans decks and everything. Of course, this is people forcing the issue, but obviously we see this now with Warhammer 40k, with some of the top decks in the legacy metagame using certain cards from the Warhammer set, because that was legal in the legacy format. If you print a commander set, that's going to happen, and you're going to have cards that are viable in these formats. And obviously with the whole Storm thing that I mentioned in the beginning, we have cards that are now not necessarily available online, especially with the Fallout set not having any plan to be online. We have cards like Radstorm that aren't available, and any card with big powerful mechanics like this are very important to feature online with testing and playability. And obviously with these older formats like Vintage and Legacy not having necessarily growing scenes when it comes to paper, it's important to have them accessible and be one for one online. But of course that's not happening because licensing is a big issue. Having them be available throughout is a problem, and it costs a lot of money, I imagine, for the licensing to be consistent and available for the whole game. So what's going to happen with Marvel? Now we see that this is going to be a large tentpole set where there's going to be multiple sets. We know that from the get-go, but does that necessarily mean that we're going to have them accessible straight to Modern, straight to Legacy, Standard, Pioneer, whatever, for a number of years? I mean, we can only really speculate that the straight to Marvel, or straight to Modern set, I should say, is going to be the baseline model. We see that happen with Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. But there's going to be multiple sets. So are there going to be multiple Universes Beyond level threat defining sets that kind of act like the whole Modern Horizons thing, where we had the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters, and thankfully at least Orcish Bowmasters being a name that isn't necessarily tied to the Universes Beyond IP and can be reprinted down the line, but the One Ring, that is tied to Lord of the Rings. We have to make a functionally unique reprint of that card to ever reprint it. We can't just have the One Ring appear in a future visit to Kamigawa. It's not necessarily linked to that set. So how do we reprint these cards, especially with Marvel? How do we reprint your Iron Man card? How do we reprint your Thanos card? If we do multiple sets, are we going to do multiple storylines with the X-Men, multiple future timelines and past timelines? And it's just really, how do we explore all of this and make the set in a way where it's not only accessible now, but it's accessible down the line? And the whole collectability aspect really then comes to a head because of the success of Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. We see that the set's success was primarily due to the One Ring, as I was mentioning, because a lot of folks are opening packs, wanting to open the whole lottery card of it all, the multi-million-dollar card, because it didn't have a price set to it. And we had multiple stores over time setting prices for this card and just increasing the hype around it. And a lot of people have speculated that with the coming of the Marvel set, we're going to see what a lot of pop culture fans now see as the collectability aspect of the game, being the Infinity Stones, the one-of-one cards, and just the one-of-one objects in the Marvel universe. And it could be so that they don't go with the Infinity Stones. They could go with different objects that are one-of-ones. They could go with different Infinity Gauntlets. They could go with Thor's hammer. Like, there's so many different options that they could go, and so many different templates and things that they could follow off of. Notably, there are other games like Marvel Snap that they can template off of in terms of abilities and what the cards can do. And especially when it comes to an arena perspective, if you really compare Alchemy and the effects and abilities that exist in that game, that could be a very good way to directly port Marvel Snap concepts onto the Arena client. And so we could see a massive shift in how cards work. We could have multiple different types of the same card exist in different realms, where, you know, when you play the Infinity Gauntlet card in Alchemy Marvel set, you could then conjure up different pieces of the Infinity Gauntlet into your deck, and once you have them all out in the battlefield and you equip them onto the Infinity Gauntlet, you win, or something like that, right? Or you play a whole new game, or you win this game and create a sub game. I don't know, whatever it might be. There could be different ways that you implement a card like this. But the big problem is if you wanted to do this, you then create the divide. You could create 1-of-1 Infinity Stones. You could create 1-of-1 Thanoses, 1-of-1 Iron Mans, or you could create different versions of them. Right now we have the X-Men 90 kind of 90s cartoon that's doing really well right now. Could you create multiple versions of Wolverine, multiple versions of Magneto throughout the ages, different versions of them that could exist, where this is a 1-of-7 Wolverine, but then the 2-of-7 has a different art because it's from a different era. And that really is like you're functionally creating 1-of-1s out of multiple sets. There's so many different ways that you can create this form of implementation through the differentiation of art, through the differentiation of abilities, and creating attraction and pull onto the different platforms. And I think this is the ultimate line that's going to be explored, with multiple Universes Beyond sets being pushed into the scene further down the line, with multiple tentpole sets being announced. We see that something like this can be a real long-term problem in terms of the abilities that you have in implementation on Magic Arena, on Magic Online, can be very different from how you're doing it in paper. And in terms of the 1-on-1 collectability, a lot more folks might be opening up paper sets and then playing with these cards and then going online and seeing that they work differently. And so this is going to create that further divide of content creators and even players switching and their experiences being different when playing Magic Online, Magic Arena versus Magic Paper. And this obviously then becomes even further divided with the kind of the love child of Magic right now, which is Commander as a format. Obviously, this is going to be a great set, with recent records being broken with Outlaws of Thunder Junction for the amount of legendaries printed into the set. Imagine the amount of legendaries that are going to be printed through the Marvel collaboration. Right? Like, we're going to have big names, you know, out of the Avengers coming in, out of the X-Men coming in. Like, there's so many big Marvel characters that could be made into legendaries, that could be, you know, uncommon legendaries as well could exist for third-rate characters and everything like that. There's so many things that can be done to expand this game, but my fear is that creating these 1-of-1s, creating these uniquely mechanical cards that exist online and maybe an alchemy implementation could lead to the further divide of this game. And I think that's where the Gathering starts getting split, where the Gathering is different online versus in paper, where the Gathering is different in a pack versus on a table. And I think that is where this problem lies. And that is what I wanted to present to you. Do you believe that the Marvel collaboration will create a collectability versus playability divide? I think there's going to be a lot of folks out there, the whales of the game especially, that are going to be buying a lot of product, that are going to be buying a lot of packs and cards to collect versus play. And this is going to be artificially spiking up the price of this. And I can imagine, especially from a collaboration coming from Disney, owned by, you know, Disney owning Marvel, that these sets are going to be rather expensive to produce. They have to outset the cost of collaboration and the licensing, and we as the consumer are going to have to eat that cost. And so not only with the rising cost of life and inflation and all that stuff, not only are we going to have to eat these costs, we are then going to have to see that come across throughout the years as the rising cost of these cards increase. Obviously, they're going to go up and up and up. They're not going to decrease, because with the licensing issues that we see right now, we don't have a solution to them. We have a role of digital licensing expert coming down the line, but we know how licensing works with different IPs and different mediums. Those aren't solved at all. Licensing is a set amount of time, costs a lot of money, and it can't just keep happening over and over again. They're ultimately going to move away. There could be a Star Wars collaboration, a DC collaboration, and just different things that come down the line for Magic that are ultimately net positive for the game, but honestly just lead to an overall problem in terms of the consumer in a long term not being cared for. It is a very short-term decision, and I don't necessarily have a solution to it. I just want to add to the conversation of it being a problem. It's obviously very exciting that Marvel is coming to Magic the Gathering, and overall, at the end of this video, I want to say that I am all for these type of collaborations. I'm all for different folks coming into the game, experiencing the game, and playing it through IPs that they connect with, they feel with, and they recognize. And that's really important to the growth and success of the game. But obviously, implementation is key, and how that's done is going to split your player base or join it together and have it grow as a whole. Or maybe their goal is that the amount of people coming in will ultimately outweigh the amount of people leaving. But I'll leave it up to you in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of the Marvel x Magic the Gathering collaboration. Do you think that I'm completely off basis? Do you think that this is a discussion that's even worth having? Or am I just being a negative Nancy altogether? I don't know. I'm just out here ranting, just kind of thoughts out in my head. Sound off in the comments.